All right, everybody, we're back. We're back. So today we got a very interesting video here. Guys, the link to this video will be down in the description below. So today we got every century's worst year explained in 18 minutes. So guys, this is my first time here watching this one here, so let's not waste time and let's hop right in.
First century, in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius, a major volcano in southern Italy, erupted with catastrophic force, wiping out the Roman cities Pompeii and Herculaneum. A towering 33 kilometers plume of ash and gas rained down molten rock and pumice at 1.5 million tons per second, unleashing 100,000 times the energy of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. Thousands were buried alive as pyroclastic surges engulfed the cities. Second century, in 165 AD, the Antonine Plague swept through the Roman Empire, killing 5 to 10 million people. Likely smallpox or measles, it spread through soldiers returning from war with the Parthian Empire in the east, devastating cities and the Roman army. The outbreak crippled trade with India and Southeast Asia, leading to economic decline and social unrest. On top of that, the war itself caused mass displacement and further economic strain for both empires. Third century.
Guys, look at all what our people have been through in the past. I don't think we should be complaining about anything.
Displacement and further economic strain for both empires. Third century. In 251 AD, the plague of Cyprian ravaged the Roman Empire, killing up to 5,000 people per day in Rome and slashing Alexandria's population, which was part of the Roman Empire at that time, from 500,000 to 190,000. Likely caused by smallpox, measles or hemorrhagic fever, the disease devastated food production and the military, worsening the crisis of the 3rd century, a period of invasions, civil wars and economic collapse in the Roman Empire. In response, Emperor Decius ordered mass sacrifices to the Roman gods, leading to the persecution of Christians who refused to comply. 4th century. In July 365 AD, a massive earthquake near Crete struck the eastern Mediterranean, triggering a tsunami that wiped out coastal cities. Alexandria, one of the largest cities in the world, was devastated, with tens of thousands dead in a single day. The tsunami swept inland for miles, destroying towns, sinking ships, and leaving survivors stranded without food or clean water. Countless settlements were wiped off the map. Beyond the tsunami, the Huns were beginning their violent migrations across Central Asia, setting off a chain reaction of destruction that would eventually crush Europe's civilizations within a century. The Huns' arrival in Eastern Europe pushed other tribes, like the Goths, into Roman territories, contributing to the empire's destabilization. Another mention for this century has to be the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD. This was a turning point for the fall of Rome, where the Goths defeated tens of thousands of Roman soldiers, including Emperor Valens. 5th century. In 410 AD, Rome was sacked by the Visigoths under King...
I don't think I would, I'm I'm just gonna say this, I don't think I'll be able to, like, withstand all this. Like, you know, in today's day, a lot of people call us, you know, softies, etc. And just looking back to see, you know, the things that have happened to us. Yeah, you can call me softy all day long. Let's go.
Century. In 410 AD, Rome was sacked by the Visigoths under King Alaric. This event marked the first time in 800 years that Rome had fallen to a foreign enemy and symbolized the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire. The sack led to mass deaths, the looting of Rome's treasures, and widespread chaos throughout the empire. The shock was profound, signaling to the world that the Roman Empire was no longer the invulnerable power it once was. Another mention in this century has to be Attila the Hun's invasion of Gaul in 451 AD, which led to massive devastation across Europe. 6th century, often called the worst year to be alive, 536 AD easily takes the trophy here. This year kicked off a global disaster of biblical proportions. A series of volcanic eruptions blanketed the earth in a thick cloud of ash, causing a volcanic winter. The sun was blocked for 18 months, leading to freezing temperatures, crop failures, and widespread famine. People faced droughts, snow in summer, and economic collapse.
18
The year
months?
536 set the stage for an even darker period, including the plague of Justinian, which would go on to kill a third
18 months? That is. What the heck? No, I see why this is, the worst time to be alive. Guys, this is really. Oh my goodness. Again, guys, we cannot complain with what we have today. Of course we can. We can because there's a lot of nonsense going on today, but nothing close to what I'm seeing. Like, I wouldn't be able to handle anything close to what these people, experienced.
and economic collapse. The year 536 set the stage for an even darker period, including the plague of Justinian, which would go on to kill a third of the population of the Byzantine Empire. 7th century, in 664 AD, the Yellow Plague hit Britain and Ireland
plague
with
after
devastating
plague.
effect, wiping out entire monasteries that were the heart of social and religious life at that time. While the death toll may have been smaller compared to other pandemics, the disruption was massive and the ripple effects were felt for generations. Another worthy mention of this century is the death of Muhammad in 632 AD, which triggered a power vacuum in the Arabian Peninsula. This led to the Ridda Wars, a series of violent revolts and internal conflicts within the Muslim community. 8th century, in 750 AD, the Abbasid Revolution erupted, marking a brutal turning point in Islamic history. The Abbasids overthrew the Umayyad Caliphate in a violent series of events, including the Battle of the Zab. This battle led to the Umayyads' dramatic fall and was followed by a bloody purge, with nearly every member of the ruling family executed. What followed was widespread civil war and chaos across the Islamic world. 9th century, in 865 AD, the Great Heathen Army, a massive coalition of Viking warriors, stormed England with one goal: total conquest. Unlike earlier Viking raids that focused on quick plundering, this invasion was a full-scale occupation, targeting the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of East Anglia, Northumbria, Mercia and Wessex. Led by the infamous sons of Ragnar Lodbrok, including Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan Ragnarsson and Ubbe, the Viking force was among the largest of its kind, launching a brutal 14-year campaign that shattered England's stability. Monasteries were looted, towns and villages were burned to the ground, and entire kingdoms collapsed under the relentless assault. The loss of life was staggering, and the English were thrown into chaos as their lands fell to the invaders. 10th century.
Again, guys, we're still fighting. It's just instinct, I believe. We human beings just enjoy hurting one another. In the previous reaction, I said that there must be a better way for us, to just get things done properly, without hurting one another. But apparently, I'm starting to believe that it's not possible. Of course, we're in 2026, and we're still fighting. We're still fighting.
The English were thrown into chaos as their lands fell to the invaders. 10th century. In 907 AD, the once mighty Tang dynasty collapsed, throwing China into chaos. The empire, which had been one of the most powerful civilizations in the world, fractured into competing warlord states, marking the beginning of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. With no central authority, warlords fought for dominance, and the central plain became a battlefield drenched in blood. Cities were sacked, alliances were made and broken, and millions died from massacres, starvation, and relentless warfare. Widespread famine and economic collapse followed as trade routes were disrupted and farmland was constantly pillaged by warring factions. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, the Abbasid Caliphate was deep in decline, with power shifts leading to localized conflicts. In Europe, the Vikings were still actively raiding, with ongoing warfare in England, Ireland, and France contributing to widespread suffering and instability. 11th century. In 1099 AD, the First Crusade reached its bloody climax as Christian knights laid siege to Jerusalem, breaching its walls after weeks of starvation and bombardment. What followed was one of the most infamous massacres of the medieval era. Tens of thousands of Muslims and Jews were slaughtered. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was turned into a royal palace, and the Dome of the Rock transformed into a Christian shrine. This incident fueled ongoing religious warfare between the Christian and Muslim worlds for centuries. On top of that came widespread famine and disease in some parts of Europe due to poor harvests and ongoing warfare. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire was dealing with the Passionist invasions. Christian kingdoms in the north of Spain were fighting against Muslims, and the aftermath of the Norman conquest still lingered with resistance against Norman rule. 12th century. In 11th...
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just shaking my head and like, how would I say? Like, I'm just like disgusted. A little bit like angry as well. Yeah, these things has happened already, years ago. So yeah, what's done is done. Like, I just can't stop thinking like we're still like that. We haven't changed one bit. Yeah, in today's day, like I said, we can't really complain, based on what has happened. Like, yeah, like I cannot complain at all. Yeah, we don't have it great, but compared to these people, no.
Still lingered with resistance against Norman rule. 12th century. In 1177 AD, the Battle of Montgisard marked a significant victory for the Crusader kingdoms. Led by the 16-year-old Baldwin IV, the Crusaders defeated Saladin's army in a battle that had heavy casualties on both sides. But the battle did little to halt the ongoing strife in the Holy Land, and the conflict between the Crusaders and Muslim forces raged on. Meanwhile, the same year, the mighty Angkor Empire saw the beginning of its collapse as it faced internal strife and external attacks, notably from the Cham Empire. This marked a period of instability that would continue for decades. Another mention in this century has to be the 1138 Aleppo earthquake in northern Syria, with estimates of over 200,000 deaths. Its disruption of key trade routes shifted trade from land to sea, boosting the rise of Italian city-states like Venice. 13th century. The siege of Baghdad in 1258 AD by the Mongol Empire resulted in the destruction of the city and the massacre of hundreds of thousands of inhabitants. This event marked the end of the Islamic Golden Age and led to a significant cultural and scientific decline in the region. This devastating event coincided with the aftermath of the 1257 eruption of Mount Samalas in Indonesia. The eruption, which released massive amounts of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, caused global cooling. By 1258, the world was already feeling the effects, with harsh winters, crop failures, and famines spreading across the globe. 14th century. In 1347 AD, the world faced one of the darkest chapters in human history: the arrival of the Black Death. This devastating pandemic.
And before we get to this, guys, again, ladies and gentlemen, watching this here really, broadens the mind of the individual. I feel like, if you're part of any of the countries, I feel like all of us are, part of this, regardless of where you are in the world. If you look at years ago, but again, watching this kind of makes you a bit stronger, as like you're going through something right now. I'm sorry, I'm going off topic of what we're kind of doing, but I just feel like it kind of gets the individual a bit more hardened, like like toughen up, like that's what I want to say.
In 1347 AD, the world faced one of the darkest chapters in human history: the arrival of the Black Death. This devastating pandemic was caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, spread through fleas and airborne droplets. It killed an estimated 1/3 of Europe's population, wiping out around 200 million people globally. It's believed to have first been introduced to Europe during the siege of the Genoese trading port of Kaffa in Crimea, when the Golden Horde army launched an assault on the city, which brought the plague with them. From there, it spread rapidly through the Mediterranean, carried by fleas on black rats that traveled aboard Genoese ships, making its way through North Africa, West Asia, and eventually the rest of Europe. Many saw the plague as divine retribution, leading to widespread panic. This was the second major disaster to strike Europe in the late Middle Ages, following the Great Famine of 1315. The famine, triggered by a series of crop failures, led to widespread death and crime. By the time the Black Death arrived, Europe was already weakened. 15th century.
I can't imagine going through this, guys. Like, for example, we have a lot of technology, and we're more advanced, now than ever. So, of course, even going through something like this here, we can get things done. But back then, there was nothing like how we have things today. But people still survive, you know? They still survived.
By the time the Black Death arrived, Europe was already weakened. 15th century. The year 1453 marked one of the darkest moments in this century, the fall of Constantinople. When the Ottoman Turks captured the city, it brought an end to the Byzantine Empire, a once thriving center of culture and power that had endured for over a millennium. Tens of thousands of defenders and civilians were either massacred or enslaved. This event also triggered a massive refugee crisis as thousands fled the city, scattering across Europe, adding further strain to the continent's political and social fabric. The fall also obliterated key trade routes which would have lasting economic repercussions. The Ottomans also tried to capture Belgrade in that same year. The siege, although unsuccessful, resulted in even more casualties and destruction. 16th century. In 1520, smallpox was introduced to the Americas by European explorers, resulting in one of the most devastating epidemics ever. In some areas, mortality rates soared to 90%, leaving entire communities decimated. The disease ravaged various indigenous groups across the Americas, decimating native populations in regions like the Andes and North America, leading to death tolls in the millions. This pandemic was particularly devastating for the Aztec Empire. The disease spread rapidly, killing countless people, including many warriors and leaders who would have been essential for resisting the Spanish conquest. In just a year, the mighty Aztec civilization was brought to its knees by a combination of smallpox and Spanish military forces. 17th century.
As we go higher, I want to say it becomes it's still serious, you know. But like, you know, the first couple of centuries, it was like, wow. Yeah, I'm good where I'm at, you know, like, yeah, I don't want to experience anything in that time. But yeah, it started to get like, you know, then, you know, the religious part. Come to think of it, I never realized there were so many, you know, religious warfares like this here and, you know, physically like this.
By a combination of smallpox and Spanish military forces. 17th century. In 1644, the Ming dynasty crumbled under the weight of internal rebellion and external invasion. The chaos began with a peasant uprising in Beijing. But before the rebels could secure their rule, the Manchu-led Qing dynasty swept in, seizing control and establishing a new imperial order. During the transition, China was engulfed in brutal warfare, leaving millions dead. To make matters worse, this all happened during the peak of the Little Ice Age, a period of global cooling that led to crop failures and widespread famine. The combination of war, starvation, and disease resulted in an estimated 25 million deaths, making it one of the deadliest upheavals in Chinese history. The 1601 Russian famine, caused by the eruption of a volcano in Peru, killing around 2 million people, also deserves a mention for this century. 18th century. In 1783, disaster struck both India and Europe in a year of unimaginable suffering. The Chalisa famine, triggered by a severe El Niño event, led to relentless droughts across the Indian subcontinent. Crops withered, rivers ran dry, and starvation spread like wildfire. This catastrophe followed another devastating famine in South India the year before, compounding the crisis. In total, as many as 11 million people perished. Meanwhile, Iceland's Laki volcano erupted, spewing toxic gases into the atmosphere. The fallout poisoned crops across Europe, triggering widespread famine and disease. On Iceland,
guys, this famine, like I cannot imagine a dying of starvation. Like this is, guys, we've all been, you know, hungry a couple of times, you know, and of course you're watching me, you know, despite your situation. I know I'm not sure where you're from, where you've been, but just thinking of just dying of starvation, that is brutal.
Poisoned crops across Europe, triggering widespread famine and disease. On Iceland itself, half of the livestock died and a quarter of the population perished from famine and fluorine poisoning. The toxic haze drifted across Britain and France, killing thousands from respiratory disease. The eruption also disrupted monsoons in Africa and India, worsening global food shortages. 1755 AD also has to be mentioned for this century. The Lisbon earthquake killed up to 100,000 people, leveling Portugal's capital with tremors, tsunamis, and fires. Meanwhile, in Central Asia, the Qing dynasty wiped out up to 400,000 of the Jungar Mongols through mass slaughter, famine, and forced migration. 19th century. In 1816, the world experienced what became known as the Year Without a Summer, a time of freezing weather that turned entire regions into wastelands of failed crops and starving populations. This was caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815. The explosion shot so much ash and sulfur into the atmosphere that it dimmed the sun and triggered a global temperature drop. Across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia, summer never arrived. Frost blanketed fields in June, snow fell in July, and relentless rain drowned what little remained of struggling crops. Famine spread as food supplies dwindled, sparking riots and mass migrations. In China, floods destroyed rice crops, while in Europe, desperate people resorted to eating moss, sawdust, and even stray animals. 20th century.
Oh my
in
goodness. Did you guys hear this? Oh my goodness. Again with this famine thing, starvation. Guys, I honestly, I'm thankful for, what I have today, even if I don't have much. But at least, yeah, looking back at these things, things that have happened, you just can't complain, people. Eating moss?
Moss, sawdust, and even stray animals. 20th century. In 1918, the world was already reeling from the horrors of World War I when an even deadlier enemy arrived, the Spanish flu. This pandemic tore through military camps in entire countries, killing an estimated 50 million people. Meanwhile, the war's final year displaced millions, economies were shattered, and the brutal Red Terror in Russia was initiated by the Bolsheviks. But we need to mention other years of this century. The 1921 Soviet-Russia famine was another devastating tragedy caused by war, revolution, and drought, resulting in an estimated 5 million deaths. Then, in 1942, World War II reached one of its darkest moments. The Holocaust intensified with the Wannsee Conference. The Battle of Stalingrad became one of the bloodiest battles in history, and the global conflict raged on with key battles like Midway in the Pacific and El Alamein in Africa. Meanwhile, Japan's brutal occupation of Asia led to atrocities like the Sokching massacre. 21st century.
We previewed, I should say, we reacted to a World War II video, and that was brutal to see the amount of individuals who died in this. People that had, I would say nothing to do with the war. It's so sad to see what we human beings do.
Of Asia led to atrocities like the Sokching massacre. 21st century. 2020 is considered the worst year of the current century so far, where the world was hit with a series of crises all piling up on top of each other. The pandemic arrived, causing deaths, global lockdowns, forced quarantines, and a global economic downturn.
That was
then
bad.
there was the psychological strain of being separated from loved ones, curfews, and social isolation. Also, many businesses were destroyed by the lockdowns, pushing people into financial ruin. The same year saw wildfires ravaging regions like Australia, California, and the Amazon rainforest, burning millions of hectares and claiming lives while destroying vast portions of wildlife. Locust swarms in Africa and the Middle East swept through crops, causing widespread famine. Hurricanes and typhoons broke records, wreaking havoc across communities. Massive civil unrest spread worldwide, while the Beirut explosion leveled much of the city, adding to the year's immense suffering.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a fantastic video, I have to say. The official link is in the description. It seems to me that the 21st century feels like of course I was a part of it. Same, you watching me right now, we were a part of it. Compared to what the others have experienced, I don't think, we can really talk. Seriously, like we got like it was brutal. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people, left us, meaning are not here anymore. But it was like, to me, looking at this from the get-go, like from first century, it's like, yeah, we can't complain. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I've a lot of the centuries that went on this video. A lot of the problems that came upon like us, I feel like we human beings were the reason for this. Even if so some of them were like natural disasters, things we don't have control of. I believe. I think we're very good now, but in terms of technology, but yeah, natural disasters. But yeah, a lot of the things that happened, it was because of us human beings. Basically, some people may say greed. Some people want power. Everyone has their own reason, but I feel like we are to blame for a lot of the things that went on. I feel like we are the dumbest creatures on the planet. Honestly, like I feel people that are smart and can do a lot of things. I feel like we're wasting our potential. We just like to hurt each other and make each other disappear. But I have to say that was a very informative video to watch. I highly recommend this. I will be sharing this as well. Please, if you can, guys, like the video. Let me know what's on your mind and subscribe to this channel. And I'll see you guys later. Take care.